We're all energetic, ready to go. All right, let's do this. All right, so we got 3:30. So, as usual, just letting you guys know, this is just for educational purposes only. Everything that you see on here, I'm just teaching you guys. I'm not a financial advisor whatsoever, but I am a licensed agent based out of Las Vegas. So let's get started. All right, so what I'm gonna do, since we don't have something that we're gonna actually look at like for the first time, I'm gonna pretty much underwrite two properties that my buddy Tony in here sent me recently. So actually, Tony is also based out of Las Vegas. He's licensed, and all I really did was I looked on free websites that is towards commercial, like LoopNet, Crexy, and I basically just try to find properties that I thought would be under market. And I underwrote the property, I advertised it, created a small little quick flyer, put it on Instagram, and Tony saw it, sent it to one of his investors, and now one of his investors is acquiring one. We're actually funding it today or by Tuesday because Monday's a holiday. And then we also have one that's combining right across the street from that, and I'll show you guys the flyers. So it's going to be potentially two deals because of simple underwriting, you know, Tony seeing it, passing it off to somebody, and that's literally how we got this deal put together. So because of that, and Tony is also licensed, he's getting a referral commission from me. So it's just, you know, part of doing business, which is pretty neat.
Relationships.
That's awesome. Relationships, exactly. I didn't have to do all the work. I didn't know a buyer per se, but I underwrote the deal. The deal looked great. And I was like, hey, this is under market. And I'll show you guys exactly why this is a great deal. All right. So let me share my screen real quick. Let's make sure, here we go. All right. So I'm going to just do some basic napkin underwriting stuff. I'm going to make my screen a little bigger so you guys can all see it. Everybody see this?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right.
Feel free to ask questions, guys. Literally, like, you guys want to learn, you got to stop being scared. No question is stupid. Just don't repeat it. Don't repeat the question. Write it down so you don't have to repeat it. But bring up any question. If you guys are literally first time looking at this calculator, you're going to have a lot of questions. Answer them. This is what he's here for. We're not teaching 100, 200 people that paid for the class that already understand it. This is the class. This is where you're learning. Yeah. So ask questions, okay?
Very, very basic stuff. So first and foremost, when you guys are trying to find properties, the two websites that are free is Crexy.com right here. The other one is LoopNet.com. So we don't necessarily, commercial doesn't have an actual MLS like how real estate agents pull up MLS. These are just the two free ones that you can sign up. You can create a free account and you can literally find any asset class in here that has to do with commercial. You know, website, create the account, and then down here you can see all the different asset types that you could look for. All right, even with LoopNet, all you're doing is for lease or for sale. You can find auction properties, businesses for sale. And later on down the road, as another resource, is called CoStar. When you start making money, this is probably one of the best data market analysis websites that you can find for commercial. But this is really pricey. I believe it's around $400 a month for a subscription. And you can't share login, unfortunately. So you can either partner up with a broker that's you're doing deals with, and that's how I utilize and leverage my relationships. Is I find people that's been in the business for a long time, and I literally ask them like, "Hey, can you help me run comps?" And this is how I find my deals. Sometimes is through that because, you know, that it's all about creating relationships in this business. So once you use these website, Crexy or LoopNet, you pretty much look for the asset class you're looking at, and because this is multifamily, we're going to look for multifamily. So we're looking for apartment buildings, and then you can just pretty much choose your location. I'm in Las Vegas, so that's what I looked at. All right, and then there's 25 results, and it shows you the map. this is Crexy. So the layouts are a little bit different on the interface depending on what you're using. But for here, I kept it really broad, multifamily, any price, any cap rate, and there's just one filter, which is the apartment buildings. Everything's on market. I don't want to do anything auction. Let's call for offers, turn that off, and then let's turn off highest and best, and let's see what we got. We still got 25, cool. So if you focus on here and you're looking at multifamily, right, you're gonna see a few different things and you're gonna catch a few different things once you start really understanding what you're looking for. You'll see the price, what they're offering it at. You'll see how many units per units. Focus on what it says per unit, right? This is a 12 unit, $150,000. This one says 8 units, 281, 250,000 per unit. All right, they'll tell you the address, but look at that. This one's a 16 unit, 149,938. So you're starting to kind of see like where the average price per unit is just in Las Vegas, right? Look, 162,500, 148. So you kind of, it's telling you the story like, hey, you know, pricing right now, everyone's kind of trying to price it around that 150 average per unit. So when I noticed that the subject property that we're going to underwrite today was way below that, that kind of rang a bell, and I said, you know what, let me see what the numbers look like, and maybe we can pull something out of it. So the subject property on this that we're going to look at is, let me see, where is it? Right here. This is the first property that I advertised that Tony sent his investor, right? The price tag on this is 800,000 for 9 units. So if you really break that down, look at the price per unit, it's 888,000. You gotta ask yourself, why is it so cheap, right? When you start getting into the mix of multifamily and you break it down per unit, that's over 50% of what, you know, an average price tag of a single unit is in multifamily. If you're averaging 150 and this is at almost 89,000, there's a few different reasons why it can be, right? Underutilized opportunities in the property by, you know, under market rents. It needs fixing to add value to the property. You know, expense ratio is a little too high maybe, right? No property management. There's a bunch of different things, vacancies. So you got to take that all into consideration. And with this, when you click on the ad, it'll tell you a few different things that you got to look out for, which is the OM. The OM is the Offering Memorandum. And it basically shows you a quick flyer of what this property consists of, right? Just basic information. They did add a very simple rent roll right here, right? It tells you what the unit number is, how many units there are in that property, what type of specs, bedrooms and bathrooms they are. It tells you one of them is with a month-to-month tenant that's a manager. The other one is boarded up, but 2 of them are vacant. And monthly income is 425 up to 575. And the projected rents are right here. So you can already tell that this property is way under market value by pretty much 50% too. All right, so a few things that you want to ask a broker, or if you're a direct to seller, is the offering memorandum if you're talking to a broker, because most direct to sellers, they won't create their own flyers, right? Second thing you want to ask for is profit and loss statement, right? So if we go right here, profit and loss statement. The third thing you want to ask for is the T12, which is the trailing 12 months of financials. The last 12 months, we just completed August. So property management companies, they take a little while to gather all the information. So you might just get up to July versus August, and that's okay. As long as you get the last 12 months, right, of 2021 up to 2022, that's fine. And then you want to get the rent rolls because you want to see what the history of these renters are in the property. You want to know when they got the lease, when they signed it, how long is their lease term, when does it end, who's behind on payments that's delinquent, who's on any special government assistance like Section 8. Like all these things help tell a story about why the property is undervalued, or, you know, what's the perception of what the why they're advertising at a certain price. So all these things are key important files that you need to ask. And more often than not, you'll probably get 2 of them out of 4. And they'll probably ask you, if you're talking straight to a broker and it's advertised on LoopNet or Crexi or something, you're going to ask for what's called proof of funds, right? And basically, if you're the investor or if you are the one investing in it, they're going to want to see a buyer's profile to see if, if you have any type of previous investments. It's more for credibility purpose. And if you get intimidated by that, there's ways around that you can tell the broker that, you could say it's not you that's putting your name on the property or title, it's your private lender. And you can use that as, I guess, your excuse to say, this property is for my investor and not myself, because he's the one that's putting the money up. There's ways around it, or you could, make relationships with an agent and have them negotiate for you. There's nothing wrong with talking with an agent, because they're basically just a messenger, right? Best thing about that is you don't have to negotiate directly with the seller. They do that for you, and it makes communications a lot easier than you think. Commercial real estate in general, and this is pretty much nationwide, it's a very boys club driven type of industry. Agents, brokers that's been in the business for a very long time, they're very short. They don't want you wasting their time. They're very upfront, pretty straightforward. And most of the times you even have a hard time getting a hold of certain brokers, because they don't, they either don't want to, they don't know who you are. You don't have some type of credibility and stuff like that. So just want to give you guys a heads up.
That's true. That's 100% true. If you think there's single family home, like residential, realtors can get savvy. I've met some of the most douchebag people. What do you do? Commercial real estate. Oh, okay. Like, I was in the car business. There are a lot of people very, very similar. Just depends on who you are, right, as a person. So the higher you elevate, the more you become the person you are. So if you're a piece of shit, you become the biggest piece of shit. If you're a good person, you become a better person.
Yeah. So don't be intimidated by that. Reach out to me if you need me to talk to the brokers. Sometimes there's other ways to get around them, but you never want to go around them if it's already listed, just because obviously the seller's already on their contract. But more often than not, I probably have an easier conversation with brokers than I do with sellers, just because we don't have to negotiate back and forth. It's just more of like, hey, my buyer wants this, or I want this, and then they just relay the message. At the end of the day, brokers are just, or agents, they're really just focusing on making sure that they get top dollar for their client and they get paid at the end of the day, right? So they're just media. Yeah.
A quick question. So is this applicable to from a residential perspective for multifamily and commercial when you're asking for those 4 documents?
No, this is just for multifamily.
Well, I mean, specifically, so they consider multifamily residential 4 units or 4 doors and less.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right. Yeah. If it's 2 units to 4 units, it's still considered residential in like the loan perspective, right? But you still can get rent rolls and P&L statements on a 2 unit if they track it, right? Typically, these are like for 5 units and up. More on the investors that have property management groups that have it tailored to that, because they keep track. Because once you start hitting those multiple units on the 5+, that's when it becomes a commercial loan. And they have to track that for, lenders, right? Because the lenders are going to ask for certain documents like a rent roll and the profit and loss statements in order for them to underwrite the deal, because they look for different things versus an investor does, right? Mm-hmm. Investors look for certain data metrics. Investors look at different. What I'm teaching you guys today is based on what we look for as an investor, right?
Got it. Yep. Thanks.
Yep. Welcome. Cool. So if you guys are taking notes, here's a few shortcuts that you guys want to write down. These are very, very basic on how to find deals. It's formula driven, but you can do this behind the napkin, underwriting type of thing, right? So it's basically reverse engineering a certain item. So if you're looking for the purchase price, if you're looking for the net operating income, the cap rate, right? You're going to take your NOI, which is your net operating income, and you divide that by the cap rate, you'll get your purchase price. Okay. If you want to find out what the net operating income, which means after you take your potential gross income minus your expenses minus all of the in-betweens, that's when you come up with your net operating income. You take your purchase price, you multiply it by the market cap rate that they're advertising it for, or the future performance of the property based on what they want to stabilize it at. And that's what you're going to get for your NOI. And then last, NOI divided by purchase price, and you're going to get your cap rate. Okay, cap rate is just basically what, it's more of a metric that investors look at kind of on a rate of return. And then obviously what they use to trade, it's in commercial, it's called trading. What does this property, or what can this property trade at, right? You're going to see high cap rates of 10 to 15%, and then low cap rates between like that 4.5 to 6.5 when it's stabilized. The higher the cap rate means that the property is a little more of higher risk versus something that's lower, which is stabilized and everything's already been value added to the property. So that's what they mean by stabilized. So you can pretty much say stabilized is like your after repair value, right? In commercial terms, they call it stabilized value. Makes that easy. The other ones, this is more towards like, if you want to get more into the asset lending shortcuts of how to find your debt service coverage ratio. Debt service is basically your mortgage, principal, and interest. That's what debt service is, right? Just those two. So if you take your NOI divided by your debt service, it'll give you a debt service coverage ratio of X amount, which typically what lenders look for is on a I don't know, my keywords turning on, 1.25. This is like the standard for most lenders. They want a 1.25 coverage ratio, meaning your net operating income has to come in 25% more than your debt service. Okay, sometimes you can get away with a 1.1, but more often than not, it's usually a 1.25. If you want to find out what the max debt service is, you take your NOI, you divide it by the 1.25, and this is what your max mortgage, principal, and interest needs to come out towards that you can qualify for the property, right? And then also your ideal net operating income, you take your debt service, you multiply that by the debt service coverage ratio, and it gives you the ideal NOI, your net operating income. So if you find these things and you reverse it, you can pretty much figure out what you need to be at on your numbers, what you need to buy it at versus what they're advertising it for. Because more often than not, a lot of these brokers will fluff the numbers to just make it show that, you know, there is higher cash flow when there is not. So it's very important to always double check and ask for the financials, because you'll catch, I've caught so many different rent rolls and P&L statements, and you have to question why the numbers are what they are, because, you know, they want to sell the property for the highest value, and you want to catch that, you want to get the property forward as low as you possibly can so you can make a higher return after doing, you know, after you're creating that value add opportunity for yourself. So if we go here on 903D, right, this is a Class C, meaning there's four different classes. There's Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D. Class A is think of it as your best communities, the best materials in the property, high-end, luxury, high amenities, and that sort, right? Class B is you're in a good neighborhood, low crime grade, still nice materials in the property, you still got nice amenities. And then you got your Class C, which is more of your, you know, middle to lower income communities, kind of in the rough areas of the city, higher crime rate, and obviously with the materials looking, you know, very basic. And then you got your Class D, which is something that you need to stay away from, is basically your war zone, right? You don't want to buy properties in a war zone. There's higher risk, but then there's also, much more headaches when it comes to that. So if we take a look at this property, this is based on 3 parcels, right? It's this building, the one in the middle, and the one on the right. So this is one parcel. This is one entire property that's being sold with 3 buildings in it. But you can see that this was pretty nice. The owner took care of it. They've done upgrades to it over time. They kept it well kept. Not a lot of, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But they're selling it for almost $89,000. And I asked myself, why is he selling it for cheap? Once I looked at the market, once I looked at the rent rolls, they were under market value. Okay, look at this, right? They're asking a price of $800,000. There's 9 units. Current GRM stands for gross rent multiplier, 19.32. That means that it's going to take you 19 years to recover all your money based on the current cash flow of this property, or the gross cash flow of this property, against the price of the $800,000. It's going to take you 19 years to recover all that. If you kept the price the same, or if you kept the rents the same, it's going to take you 19 years. Cap rate of 3.32. So that's very low. This was built in 1958, and I won't need to go over this, but you can see all the metrics. You could find this and utilize this and plug this into your spreadsheet. You obviously want your expenses. It tells us, the breakdown per year for the utilities, insurance, maintenance, pest control, property taxes. Okay. So with that being said.
Hey, Stan, before you move on, can I stop you?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so me looking at multifamily, that's why I said a lot of the stuff I don't understand. But when I do hear that a lot is cap rate. Can you go over cap rate and what does that mean?
Sure. So cap rate is just basically a measure to compare the different investment types of your property against what your return of investment is going to be. Typically, how we find cap rate is you're basically taking your net operating income, right? And you take it and you divide it by the sales price. So your net operating income is obviously after you take out your expenses from your gross rents. And so every year, it's going to make you about 7.78% based on your net operating income, because you bought it for that certain price. For this one in particular, I have it as 1.2 million. My cap rate for this is 7.78. It's kind of like a return of investment, basically. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That makes a lot of sense now.
Okay.
I always heard it. I just never understood what they was talking about when they say cap rate. I was like, what is that?
Yeah, because that's what they use as a measure of like what they want to sell it for, right? Let's say, hey, I want to trade this at a 8 cap, like an 8% cap. This is what the value is going to be at 8%. If I want to make a return of 5%, this is what it's going to be sold at. So I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So if we look at this calculator and we're going to work backwards. Okay, we're going to work backwards based on the exit market cap rate. Let's say for Vegas, let's say it's at 8%, right? That's the stabilized cap rate. I want to exit the market and I want to trade this property for 8% to the next buyer. The next buyer is going to be like, that's fine. I want to make 8% a year. Cool. Market vacancy. Basically, when you underwrite any property, you're not going to always be 100% occupied. And if you are, that's even better. But you always want to take in consideration that there is going to be vacancy throughout the whole entire year. And we keep it at 5%, right? Pro forma rents. Pro forma basically just means your future value of what this property is going to perform at. So based on the pro forma market rents, I'm going to put it right here, which is at 990.25, because I already have the numbers plugged in below. So this means that I'm taking the average of all the units right? I'm dividing it by how many units there are in the property. It was 9, but because on this, what I'm going to show you guys is going to be combined between 903 D Street, which is what I showed you earlier, right here, and this other property, which is 409 West Adams, which is directly across the street, which is 7 units. So we're calling this, it's called a blended cash flow is what you're going to hear. So if you combine 2 properties into one, you can basically get creative and put 2 properties on one loan, right? And we're underwriting it together. I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know you could do that. But if you get creative enough and you're buying 2 properties and you can stack it into one loan, you're allowed to. So we're going to underwrite this together, right? So for the 903D, we're closing this at $775,000 per unit. Okay. And then for the 409, we're going to keep it at that 779 because we haven't put a contract in that one yet. So pro forma rents, after calculating all the future rents that what it could potentially perform at, we're being very, very conservative. The average is going to be $990.25. If I took all of this, which is $15,844, and I divide it by 16 units, that's when I'm going to get an average of 990. So that's our future rents. That's not what it is today. Okay. CapEx, you're going to hear that, capital expenditures. What's my budget going to be per unit if I decide to renovate this property, right? And you can go by per square feet. You can go by each unit. But once you start getting into multifamily, you can start getting and talking to general contractors. Right now, it's costing about $7,500 to about $10,000 to turn another unit around because they're a lot smaller. They're about like 400 to 500 square feet. So it doesn't really take much materials and labor costs to turn a unit around. But let's just say it's $7,500 per unit times 16. Your total rehab is going to be about $120,000 that we're going to take for this property, right? Even though we know that the units look nice already, you never know, right? You want to just take that as a buffer because you always want to make sure that a Class C has some repairs that you want to put aside for reserves.
Mm-hmm. Now, how does that work on the multifamily side? Because of course, all buildings are not the same size. So when you said you can use price per square feet,
mm-hmm.
You're not using average in that area like zip code. You're not doing like single family home. You're not using it like using a median sales price for a square footage. Right?
No, you're just basically taking, let's say it's going to tell us right here, right? So the building, the lot size is right here, but let's see, where is it? Square units, square footage right here. So if we take 5,200, okay, this is just for underwriting purposes, right? So 5,200 for the entire living space for all the units combined is 5,200. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take $30 per square feet because that's how much it costs average to for all GCs to repair a single family home. You can just use those metrics and you multiply both of it together, you're going to come out to about $156,000.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit under budget, right? But a lot of the properties or a lot of the units already been turned around. Mm-hmm. So we're just being conservative because I could really say, hey, it's $10,000 and we can get close to that, right? Mm-hmm. So let's use $10,000. Okay, so we'll do 10,000 since that's closer to the per square feet. And then expense ratio. Expense ratio is basically what you're taking from your effective gross rents. And if we go 50% of that, right, from your effective gross rents is telling us that 90% of that is going to your expenses. You never want to go above 50%. That means that, something in the expenses is over calculated and your goal is to mitigate that expense and lower it down somehow, right? Mm-hmm. So either you have high vacancy, you have high maintenance costs in the property that wasn't deferred, and you have a high property management fee. So you can do small things like that and lower it from an expense ratio. So typically you want to stay in between that 40 to about 47, 48%. You don't ever want to go above that. And if it is, that's an opportunity to figure out where can I defer the maintenance so that we can lower the expense costs. So if we're working backwards based on an 8% stabilized cap rate, this unit based on a future projection of 8% should be worth 1.354 million. Right? So we're just basically working backwards based off of market rents, based off capital expenditures, based on how many units and our expense ratio and then vacancy. But let's say, hey, I can turn a class C into a class B. You can never turn a class C into a class A. But let's say you have a good neighborhood, you have a good unit of a building complex, low crime grade, but it's just really distressed. And you can basically say, hey, I want to trade this at 5%. When I'm done, all said and done in the next 5 years, I want to sell it for about 5%. Now your property is worth $2.16 million, right? The lower you can stabilize the property, and depending on your market, where your market is selling at, that's how you kind of navigate the price tag of where you want to be. Because you'll hear it like, I want to reposition at 5.5, I want to reposition at 6%. The end buyer is going to be the one that decides as well if this price tag is worth, it's worth for them, right? But right now, let's just say it's at 8%. So if it's at 8% stabilized, and we're taking these into consideration, that's kind of where we want to focus on is, are they overpriced or under market? But we all know that this market, but this is selling at 111,000. The other one's selling for 89,000. So what you saw earlier when I was explaining to you guys, a lot of these properties are selling for 150,000 per unit, right? So with that being said, if I take the 775 that we're purchasing the property for, and you're adding the 779 for Adams, the total price tag is going to be, the asking price would be at 1.5 million, 54,000 combined. Our offer price is going to be at 1.2, right? And you can always manipulate these numbers. You know, let's do it at the full price tag, right? Let's say we'll start off right here, 97,000 per unit, right? We're still below, we're still under market based on the price tag, but we're going in. If we're going in at that full price with the estimated repairs of 160,000, we're all in combined with the offer price estimated cost for $1.7 million, right? The going in cap rate right now is at 5.69. Now you might tell yourself, okay, 5.69, that's really low, right? But we haven't even done anything to the property yet. We haven't repositioned it. We haven't raised the rents, okay? So at this price tag, let's go down here. I've already done the work. I've already put in all the specs for each unit. This is D Street right here, the first 9 units. And then right here on Adams, right? These are the market rents currently, 425, 425. There's 2 vacants, so obviously you don't count that. There's no income on that. When we went to go take a look at the property the other day, one of the units is empty, but right now they're asking for $950 to rent it out. So that means that they're starting to boost up the rents for this particular unit. Okay, but we're being conservative. We're saying, hey, it's going to be $899 based on what they're projecting. So I put all their pro formas in here. This is all off their numbers. Okay, so these variables can change, but you always want to be conservative when underwriting properties, and you never want to be aggressive because you want to have cushion to negotiate. So if we take that all into consideration, okay, with commercial properties, it's always going to be 20% to 25% initial down payment. Unless you're finding a creative finance deal that you can do lower, but more often than not, it's going to be about 20, 25%. I was talking to a few lenders and they're having a hard time finding people to put a down payment at 20%. So we're going to be very conservative when we say 25. Interest rates are actually a lot higher than 6.5 from what I'm hearing right now, but we're going to stick with 6.5 for now with a loan term of 30 years amortized. Okay. So everything I'm doing here is really, I'm just plugging these numbers in the blue, and then it spits out all the numbers I need to see, right? Closing costs 2%. Let's take out the acquisition fee. Let's just not put that in consideration for now. And then we always want to put 10% for management, and you always want to put 5% for maintenance. And we already have a 5% vacancy. So you automatically, what you're doing is you're taking your gross rents and you're putting away 20% in reserves for a rainy day. You always want to do that because you never want to be caught with some kind of issue when buying the property and you don't have any reserves to fix it. AC goes out, windows get broken, you know, things around the house always breaks and then needs replacement. Plumbing is a big issue, right? Those are the main things that you want to keep in reserve to fix those for a rainy day. So if we're underwriting this and we're putting 20% away, we call it a war chest, reserves. I've already put in all the information that's combined into this property, right? The operating income expenses between both is almost $14,000, right? Property tax for both is $3,430. So the net operating income as is $72,733, right? If we look right here, the cap rate for the actuals as is with the current rents, because this is what it's performing at currently, it's returning us at a negative 2.58% if we bought it for that full price tag of 1.5 million plus. Now that's to you probably is like, hey, this property is bleeding. And yes, it is. Okay, and I'll show you in a second why. The DSCR is at 0.82, so you already know that this won't qualify for a DSCR loan. The annualized ROI, negative 3.56, and the GRM is 15.59 if we purchased it at that 1.54 offer price. Okay, so what does that break down to on the mortgage calculator? These are your payments, right? Full price, 75% loan to value ratio at a 6.5% interest rate. You're bleeding out $1,246 a month. Annually, that's going to be about $15,000 a year. And that's why it's not performing. But some investors don't mind that. And the reason why is because if they see potential just because they're bleeding out a little bit, but in return, they can move or vacate the premise of and evict all the tenants, and you could easily boost it up once they come in and repair it. So how do we look for that is basically how much more can we raise the rents after we remove the underpaying tenants, right? We call it pro forma. So with the pro forma, your cap rate gets boosted to 9%, your cash and cash goes to 15%. Now, an investor can look at this and that says, hey, this is now very attractive to us. If I bought this at the full price, but I can turn this around with being conservative on the market rents, I can make 15.25% on a cash and cash return, which is huge. My investors love anything 10% and above on a future pro forma. Some investors want you to underwrite it based on the current rents, right? They want a cash flow from the beginning versus the end. So there's different ways that you can underwrite a property, just more of who's your end buyer. You always got to keep your end buyer in mind and find properties based on what they like. Because if you can find what they like, it makes your job a lot easier, right? And so when I underwrote this originally, let's see if I can find this. Let me pull it up real quick. So this is, does anybody have any questions for now?
I do have one. Can you touch on that DSCR or whatever?
Yeah. So I'm not a lender, but according to lenders I've spoken with, DSCR is your debt service coverage ratio. So the standard that all lenders, commercial lenders go with is a 1.25. You're basically taking your NOI and you're dividing it by your debt service of your mortgage, your principal and interest, and you're basically taking what your net operating income is, and you have to make more than 25% of your debt service. That's the ratio it needs to be, 1.25.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, so I'm going to show you guys this unit. So this was the 9 units that I just showed you on 903 D Street. They were asking 800. We offered 775 and they took it, right? We got it for 96,875 per unit. And this is what the metrics came out to. Originally, it was only performing at a 3.4% cap rate, but with the future rents, this starts performing at a 10.44, right? Cash and cash on this was a 14.52. And this is the reason why I posted this up, because I was like, okay, if we can raise the rents up because it's under market value, an investor would find this super attractive. It can qualify for a DSCR in the future at a 2.212. And at that 775 purchase price, it'll only take them 7 years to make their money back, right? But because we're combining the 2 units together, we're blending it together. That's why the numbers look very, very different. So not to confuse you guys, but I'm just letting you guys know that we're acquiring this 903D, but he also wants to put this together because eventually we're paying for this 903D with cash. And once we close, we're going to put both of these units together into one loan. And that's the reason why I'm underwriting it as if it's one 16-unit property. So I didn't know we could do this until I found out from the investor, right? So that's small things that, you pick up on. Like, these guys have been doing it for a while. I learned stuff every single week, something new. And so now we're underwriting it combined with the pro forma. Now it's going to be performing at 15.25%, right? His net cash flow per year, if bought at that full price, is 51,000, almost 52,000. But remember, this is at full price of 1554. We're not going to offer that, right? We're thinking, let's offer, I don't know, let's see, 775 plus 725 equals, okay. So let's say we're gonna ask for a discount on this property, that 779, we're gonna ask for a discount because one property is vacant and we go off of, we go off of different factors. We basically go off of what the property condition is, the neighborhood, what the crime grades are, what recent properties have sold for in the area in a certain radius with the same amount of units. So we kind of take all that into factor, right? So let's say we're going to buy it for 725. We're going to offer 1.5 million instead of that. So we're going to ask for $54,000 off. So now those numbers look a little slightly different, right? So we went from, oops. So we went from 1.554 at a cash and cash of 15.25. If we're going to offer 1.5 million for both properties, it's kind of stayed the same actually. Hold on. Let me just make sure that, okay. Because the monthly mortgage didn't stay, it just shifted a little bit. We're getting a little bit higher on the cash and cash once we took out $54,000 in the purchase price. So small things like this does make a difference. Remember, this property, we're underwriting it with a 10% management fee on top. The 903D, there's no management right now. So they're saving themselves money from that, right? 409 West Adams, they actually have a management company that's overseeing it, but they didn't tell us what their fee is on top. So let's go lower. Let's lower it by 5%. Now, combined, they're only performing at 21% on the operating expenses, right? So that's going to be a big difference from our 40%. So if we write it at that 20, let's see, 21.3 to look at what the property is worth now, right? It's worth higher at 1.77. So we can turn this around and we can add $200,000 in value just from lowering expenses. Remember, when we initially underwrote this was running at a 40%. And it's only 1.354 stabilized. But if we lower it down to that 21.32, because we decreased the ratio on expenses, now the value of our property just went up. Small things that you add value to the property by increasing the rents, adding point laundry, adding some type of extra value to help boost the rents will give you higher price on what your property should be worth, right? How do we do this? If you focus right here, right? Our pro forma average based on the per unit is 990. The actuals are 519. This is where we get that 471 spread from just increasing the property value or the property rents is 471. So that's a big jump, right? There's 16 units. If it was 95% occupied by 12 months at an 8 cap, we've just added $1 million and $74,000 of value into the property from just raising the rents. Now, let's say if we just did $100, we've just raised it by $228,000 in value from raising rents by $100. You see the big difference on that? So your property is basically tied to what you can raise the value at. And then that's what your operating income will tell you and suggest this is what you should be selling at versus what you should be getting the value once you turn it around after a few years. Okay. Does that make sense for everybody? Let me know if you guys want me to go over something else or you guys are lost. Cool. All right, so another thing I'll tell you guys. So combined, this is that 1.54, right? Let's say you don't want to pay that $1.5 million for both properties. You know, you want something to return on a 20%, right? This is what we call massaging the numbers. If this was a lower price tag and you want to base it off of the actuals, because this is bleeding and you want to be cash flowing from the start, what do you have to buy the property at in order for you to cash flow from the start? Obviously, you can't buy it at 1.5 because you're going to be under by 575 a month. So if you want to cash flow from the start, all you got to do is change the price tag. Let's say 1.3. Now your net cash flow per month is $372 a month, but can you get away with getting a discount of $254,000? Yes or no, depending on like how bad the seller wants to, how motivated the seller are. But this is the way that we kind of analyze the numbers and say, hey, this is not worth that much. I think we believe that based on the numbers, we should be offering this, right? Small little things like that will justify if it's a good or a bad deal by just massaging the numbers and getting to a price that you want. And remember, commercial is very straightforward. It's all numbers. There's no emotions behind it like residential. So whatever the data tells you, it's exactly what it is because they're telling you exactly what they are getting for rents. They're telling you exactly what they're telling you with operating costs and what you're going to get on your income. So all you're really doing is evaluating what they're telling you, and then you're kind of structuring it out to make it fit what you need to return on for your investment. Okay. That's how we've done deals and how we structure deals all the time with creative financing, but this is how you do it with multifamily. It's not super complicated, but once you start understanding how we see the numbers and what certain formulas come out to, and you come here every single Friday, you start getting the hang of it. But that's it for now. Does anybody have any questions I could answer before we have our time?
Now you was just speaking of that's how you acquire them. What is your exit strategy? I mean, are you keeping them, and what are you just putting regular tenants in them, or are you Airbnb-ing them, or what are you doing with those?
Well, multifamily, it's all different, right? It's all different based on where you're buying it at. Most multifamily units are not Airbnb qualified. Like I would say, depending on the neighborhood, or depending on what your county says. In Vegas, we have very, very strict Airbnb short-term laws, and this is not a neighborhood that you would want to Airbnb. So just depending, there's usually 3 ways to exit, right? In multifamily, which is your value add exit, your stabilized exit, and your wholesale exit. So you tailor those numbers based on that, right? But most of the time, right now, Carlos and I, our goal is to acquire, to buy and hold Class C neighborhoods, so we can add value to them and reposition them in the next, 3 to 5 years. Ideally 3, but with the market shifting, you can hold it for the next 5 years and reposition it that way.
Now, of course, with the market shifting and all, what do you see the occupancy rate is? Is it usually like a 80% full, or what?
Every market's different. That's why every market's different. It's all tailored to that specific property. Not all properties are the same. You find out from running the numbers, whatever financial statements that they tell you, right? If there's some I've seen like 40% occupancy, there's some that's 60. It'll just depend what's the reason. Like, has the previous owner just not kept it? Are they slumlord landlords?
Right.
Is the amenities around the area not competitive compared to the other properties in your subject property? Like things like this plays a big role when it comes to your vacancies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I mean,
rates are high right now and prices are high. A lot of people are still renting right now. Rent's gonna, go up. A lot of people are gonna be renting. They can't afford. Rates are at 8%. Depending on the market they're in, some of those houses are expensive. 8% is hard. A lot of people are gonna be renting.
Right.
Hey Stan, quick question. Would this analysis change if you did like a portfolio purchase of multifamily units?
Yeah, so combined, it's the same, right? Portfolios means like you have different assets in that investment fund or whatever you're getting it from. So, but it's a combination. So portfolios could say, hey, we got a few multifamilies in here, but we also have some single families. So single family is underwritten very different from multifamily, because single family, obviously you're taking the whole comparables on a single family versus multifamily. You never want to do both. You can't compare a single family house and underwrite it the same way. Completely different metrics, but so you have to take multifamily and underwrite multifamily in that portfolio only. And then you have to separate the single families, underwrite it very differently, and then combine the both. That's what portfolio usually means.
Yeah, because I came across, again, this is on the residential side, like 2 duplexes that this one person was, the seller was kind of offering. So I was just curious, right, as the training was today, generally speaking, would the analysis be the same since they're both multifamily?
Yeah. So this is the same exact thing I'm doing with the, as long as it's multifamily, you can combine both of it, right? So this is a 9 unit and this is a 7 unit. So I'm just literally combining exactly the same, but I'm just adding on all the expenses together into one spreadsheet to make it easy. And then I run it based on what we're going to be offering at.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, my buyer just signed the agreement for the 9 unit. So we're officially going under contract on this D Street.
Hey, congrats, man. That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So once I forgot to say this. So once you guys find a deal and you guys say, hey, I think I'm ready to submit, there's a term called LOI. It's called a letter of intent. And it's basically a non-binding contract that you're going to create to submit to the seller or the broker. And it just basically states your terms of what your offer is, right? Just goes over your down payment, your purchase price, your contingencies, any loan. It's basically like a drafted unbinding contract. And then you're basically going back and forth negotiating with your end seller and whoever you're representing or yourself. And they go through it, revise it, they put in their terms, we call it redlining, but you're basically revising that LOI until you come to agreement. And once you get to an agreement, both parties sign, the next step is, we call it a PSA, which is basically a purchase and sale agreement. Once that purchase and sale agreement is drafted, both parties sign, and then you're going to open escrow. So that's how we analyze deals. This is how we underwrite it. And so we know exactly what we're going to be buying it at, because it's very important that you know that you make the money on your buy, not when you sell. All right. This is why you really want to figure out, is this property worth what it's really worth? And should I make that offer based on what the data is telling me? And if not, what price do I need to be at based on the market sentiment, based on the interest rates, the rent rolls, all that stuff that fits into my buy box, right? So that's basically what we do. And then once you submit your PSA, you go into contract, and then you just let the title company handle everything else until you're ready to close. But yeah, like Carlos mentioned, we are looking for people to start helping us underwrite deals together. We definitely are going to start needing help, because our goal is to acquire 20 units in the next 30 days between the Sunbelt states, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina,
Georgia.
And Georgia. We're looking for states that have no rent control, non-regulated, because you want to increase rents eventually, right? You don't want to get restricted. We also want to find landlord-friendly states, because like California, they're losing, right? They're not friendly to investors. So we don't want to deal with that. So those are our metrics. It's Class C neighborhoods, okay? Landlord-friendly. Sunbelt states, right? So you got your Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas. Okay, let me put it in here so you guys know exactly what we're looking for on our buy box. Okay, 100,000 per unit, ideally, or less. And then we're looking for a cash and cash return of 10% minimum. Okay. Ideally, if we can cash flow from the start, that'd be preferred, but this is what we're basing it off of, our metrics. So if you guys want to help us find some deals, multifamily units, we want to start off small. We're not trying to get crazy, but we are looking for private lenders as well to help syndicate the deal. So, we're looking for that as well. If you're interested, get with Carlos and I, and we can discuss further details on it.
How many units?
We're looking to acquire
doors.
20 doors combined this month, but at least a minimum of 4 units or more.
Got it.
Are we including Alabama and Mississippi as well?
No. Just these states right here.
Unless they're creative finance.
Unless it's creative
Creative finance, we're open to look at anything.
Yeah. Just because rates are really expensive right now. I was talking to a lender yesterday and she was saying it's between 7 and 9s, and that's interest rates kill deals. But if we can get any sellers on a creative finance in whatever states and they're open to terms, as long as we get our price and their terms, it's fine. Or vice versa. We get our terms, their price. Okay. So yeah, if you guys want to learn, if you guys want, I don't give this out, but this spreadsheet, but if you guys are really serious on wanting to learn how to underwrite deals, you guys don't get intimidated by spreadsheets, you guys actually enjoy plugging numbers in. And if you don't, this is not for you. It's not for everybody, trust me. You know, this is a lot to understand, but I mean, once you get it, you're basically of value to any investor, because most investors don't know how to underwrite deals. They rely on someone like myself to lean on to tell us, you know, give them an advice what they should buy properties at, unless they're a very experienced investor. But you know, if you run your numbers and you know what makes sense, you can underwrite any property.
I'm a numbers guy, so it's good for me.
Hey Stan, you said you were looking for seller finance, or is it okay if it's not seller finance?
No, we're looking for any deals seller finance. It can be multifamily, but as far as like our buy box, this is our straight buy box for these states, right? These are where we're going to be looking at, and then obviously Nevada too. This is my backyard.
So what kind of aggressive training you got for somebody that don't know how to underwrite right now? Somebody 0 to 100 real quick.
What I would say is just basically find a deal that you feel like might be a deal just based on price per unit. When you look on LoopNet or Crexy, do the work, talk to the agents. Don't just send something that you see on Crexy without, you know, getting the essentials, right? Your OM, your profit and loss statements, your T12, your rent rolls.
Right.
Get those things before you present it to us, because it's no value for if we're going to be the ones that's going to be looking for it. So if you want more of like a one-on-one training, schedule it with me and just be like, hey Stan, I found a deal. I got all the documents you need. Let's underwrite this together, and then we can walk through it together. Mm-hmm. So you know, we know exactly if it's a deal or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
You guys think you guys like this?
Appreciate it. Yeah, definitely fire.
It's fire, right?
Cool. Does anybody have any other questions? You guys learn?
Sure you guys have a lot of questions. Ask anything, any question. Get it out there.
All right, Carlos. Now, as far as, like I said, this second day or whatnot coming in. Now, what do you have going on? I heard you say acquisition side. What you said? You have helpers on the acquisition side. So what are you doing on that?
So acquisitions is like what I train the majority of people on, right? Acquisitions is the sales part, closing technique. Mm-hmm. So we have some acquisitions leaders in here that help out when I'm not available, right? They have the the morning services where they do the role plays, right? Okay. They're people you can lean on to. They're people that are directly working with me as well on improving. Mm-hmm. So behind the scene as well, I have others within this community that work with me, and I spend a little extra time to help improve them in the acquisition side. And they're here available as well for anybody else who needs some help. Oh, okay. So if I'm not available, there's more people out there for help. Mm-hmm. Did that answer?
I guess one more question on the buy box thing for your states. Are you just targeting those major cities? I just want to be.
Yes, we're targeting those major cities.
Who said so? Sunbelt states, major cities only in the Sunbelt states, or we're open to secondary markets? Yeah.
Let me ask you. So I'm Danny again from Miami. I'm a realtor here in Florida. Have access to the MLS. Do I come of any help if I send you listings of multifamily listed on the MLS? You already have access to those.
No, that's not going to do us any good. LoopNet and Crexy are your best sources for multifamily, but just don't send deals if you don't have all the financial data that we need to look at. You gotta do a bit of homework as well, right? Because you want to make sure, like, is this, what's the reason why you're sending this deal? You got to look at that. Are you looking, and you got to also consider what your end game is. Are you just trying to wholesale it? Are you trying to take it down yourself to add to your portfolio? You have to keep in mind what your
you guys, you said that you guys are expanding to Florida and you need 20 units.
Oh, right. Okay. So basically, if you're going to send us something in Florida, like I said, it has to be Class C. It has our buy box, 10% cash on cash minimum, right? Typically $100K per door minimum. If it's under that, I mean, sometimes you can get away with under $100K per unit, depending on how rough or how bad the distressed property it is. But I would find those metrics first before sending it over. And if you want to underwrite it together, I can set up a day we can underwrite.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to use my weekend to find something and then start.
For sure. Are you in commercial as well, or are you just residential?
No, residential. I'm actually, yeah. I have connections in commercial.
Okay.
But mostly residential, but I have connections there, so I can ask.
Nice. And you're looking to, your end goal is to acquire multifamily yourself?
In the long term, yes.
Okay. So my suggestion for you, since you are going to start doing this, obviously you're going to have to put your investor hat on, right? And you're going to want to start making connections with like commercial lenders, because commercial lenders, there's not many of them. So start looking for that, and then wholesalers that also can help feed you deals, make relationships with them that's in the commercial wholesaling business. That's where you can find more deal flow. So you don't have to do all the work yourself. And that's what we've learned to build, is create relationships with other people that do the hard work for us, right? We essentially want to be hands off on certain things, because underwriting takes a long time to do per property, because you have to look at financials, you got to dig into it. And that's why a lot of people get intimidated, because they don't want to do the work. So if you can find a wholesaler to build a relationship with, you can find commercial lenders to find, because we're eventually going to need them in Florida. That's how you can provide value for us, and we can give you value by making sure that you understand how to find a good deal or not.
Yeah, I mean, the most efficient way will be to send it over to you guys, you and Carlos, you underwrite it, and then my goal here is to learn. I don't have to be greedy at the beginning. My goal is to learn, but if I have to go and find lenders and go and do networking with wholesalers, then my time is spent there and not looking for deals. You know what I mean? So I'd rather just look for the deal, send it over to you. If you guys approve it, we talk after that, and then we see. But I just want to have something that is, easy, and you get confidence as you learn and as you do.
Yeah. Come here every Friday. You'll learn more and more every single week. I appreciate you guys coming and joining us today. I know we kind of ran a little bit over.
Stan, I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
Hey, for commercial lending, we use the same route, the social media?
Yeah, I use social media. I literally just posted one yesterday. I'm just looking for commercial lenders. Tag your favorite commercial lender, and I literally got 2. It's literally simple.
Same route as residential, basically.
Yep.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm in Florida, so
Stan,
I'm looking forward to help you guys out.
Appreciate that.
Stan, I have a question. You said CoStar, which I'm familiar with, LoopNet. And what was the third one, Chris? Could you spell it?
Crexi, CREXI.
CREXS as in Sam?
No, XI. CREXI.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe this was Marsha. She's a newcomer to the group.
Who?
Marsha?
Where's she at?
She's in Florida as well.
Okay, nice. Yeah, dude, you should go to like the local. You should go to those local real estate meetups.
Yes. Exactly.
That'd be a good idea. Find lenders right there, commercial brokers.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to have multifamily or any or more properties in Florida. I really want, besides the one I just got. I really want to get like Miami, Tampa, Orlando. Well, I'm open everywhere.
Well, you know what my end game is, so.
Yeah.
Stan, did you say Class C neighborhoods or Class C buildings?
Class C.
Class C. Buildings or neighborhoods. I mean, they kind of fall into the same, right?
They go together.
Yeah. But you could have a Class C building in a Class B neighborhood. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I just know of one off the top of my head, so that's why I was just kind of asking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be ideal, right? If you have a Class B neighborhood, but you have a rundown Class C distressed property, that's ideal.
Got it.
So if you guys also, there is a book that I was telling Carlos yesterday. If you guys have Audible, this is a good one to get in. If you guys want to do 5 or more multifamily units, it's the Multifamily Millionaire, Volume 2. Volume 1 is just basically your 2 to 4 units, but the Volume 2 is basically what encompasses commercial multifamily 5 units or more. So that's a book that I would recommend picking up on Audible if you like to just listen versus read.
That's a good book. Multifamily Millionaire.
Multifamily Millionaire, Volume 2. And then if you want more education, this is another good one. Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur. This is all commercial as well, but it gives you a lot of like your basic understanding of how to add value to properties, the breakdowns, different ways and strategies to acquire properties. So lots of many avenues. Is really just diving in and just jumping in. You know, you can't really hesitate. There you go. Grant Cardone.
There's another one right here. The dummies one. You know, because I'm a dummy.
What's the best ones for the learning them formulas?
YouTube.
You gotta get involved really. Like when I got in sub 2, I was looking through a lot of the modules or trying to find out how do I underwrite. There's not really too many underwriting sessions. It's really get the deal and then bring it to somebody who already knows, and you're gonna start learning how to do all the underwriting. You can YouTube like maybe underwriting and see it, but getting the concept is like bringing a deal, so you're seeing it a little bit differently.
Yeah, commercials it's all different lingos and terminologies. With formulas, I literally learned it on YouTube. I'm self-taught when it comes to the spreadsheets. I've put together these spreadsheets by combining other formulas of other people's spreadsheets together and just making it my own. But you know, the more you dive into it, I kind of went down the rabbit hole. So you know, I just like more data to understand it and get better analysis. You can always do back of the napkin type of underwriting, but if you really want to know your exact, you know, down to the T of what you should be offering, because that's what lenders do, you have a better position of getting a better deal for your properties.
Let me ask you, do we have access to that spreadsheet? Can we download it somewhere? Or?
No, I don't create it. I don't share it unless my incentive is if you want to do a deal with me, I'll definitely, you know, share it with you guys. It's just a lot of time and effort that I put into it. So I don't typically share it. And even if I did, you guys would 100% get lost trying to figure it out. So it's almost pointless for me to share it unless you're actually diving in, you know, you're doing this every single day. But like I said, I'm happy I'm happy to gift it if we do deals together.
But is there somewhere, because I'm a little lost with all the information that you have to gather. Is there a list of the stuff that I need to gather?
Yeah, the list. Yeah, here. I'm gonna share my screen again. So it's right here.
This makes it easy, right? Write it down. Write it down because this is homework for you guys.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you guys would normally have to go to Google.
I took a screenshot.
Okay, cool. But normally you guys would have to do all the Google, the YouTube, the research, right? This right here is one-on-one. So if you're trying to learn, write it down so you understand it. It's the same shit as going to YouTube, Google, all that shit. So if you're not going to go do that, you can learn it here. If not, you have questions for the next week. What's going to help you guys out is YouTube videos, read some books, understand the terminology a little bit more, and it becomes easier. You start to at least catch up to speed what's going on.
Yeah, so I'm continuously adding to this. I'm always continuously adding to this formula and these models. So like eventually I'll probably start teaching this, but this is down the road. You know, this is more future acquisition numbers, you know, based on like leverage equity multiples and internal rate of returns. It's all confusing for now because you're not going to get it unless you really dive into it. But it's just basically giving you a projection of future years of what you can return versus just a 1 year assessment. So down the road, I'll break it down, but for now, this is just more of a basic 101 underwriting class. Did everybody take notes on this? Everyone got it? All the shortcuts? The main three that you really need is just these three. You don't need to learn the DSCR and all that. This is just because I did a breakdown of the loan. But these are your the three main ones: purchase price, NOI, and cap rate. If you know these three, you can reverse engineer every single property value. Cool. Anybody else? Thanks for the questions, guys. Appreciate it. It's like the most questions we got. Love it.
So yeah, let me ask you again. Sorry, man,
yeah.
It's me. Once you made the call to the seller or to the management agent, you ask those three questions. What's the, I don't even know what, I cannot see I'm driving, but what is this? What is that? What is that? You put that on the napkin and then you make the numbers out of that, right?
Yeah, you can
just also ask what's the condition of the property.
Yeah, you always want to ask the condition of the property too. It's just the same thing you would ask with residential. You know, if you're representing a seller or a buyer or yourself, you always want to know what the condition of property is, timeline, motivation, you know, your 4 pillars. And then the numbers is just basically for you to find out if they're over asking or they're under market, right? It's just really understanding what the whole story is behind the property. And most times, if you can do it behind the napkin, you're welcome. Most of the time, if you can do behind the napkin, really quick calculations, you can tell yourself like, hey, this is a good deal or not. You know, I want to buy it at this certain cap, but it's not performing at that cap rate. Cool. Anybody else? Okay.
That's cool. We cool, guys. Let's
I
rock
appreciate
and roll.
Thanks, yeah, I appreciate everybody's time. You're welcome.
You guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace out.
Thank you.
Talk to you later, Stan.
Later.
Thank you.
All right, later, Carlos. Later, everyone.
Later, guys.